Welcome to SAM Conversation, a program of South Asia Monitor. Bangladesh in transition and its implications for South Asia. For this topic, it is our pleasure to welcome Dr. Smruti S. Pattanaik, Research Fellow, Manohar Parrikar Institute for Defence Studies and Analyses. The Awami League, which was a breakaway from the Muslim League in 1949 and named as Awami League in honor of people, Awam meaning the people. And also the party which got Bangladesh, because of which East Pakistan became Bangladesh, because of which it got its liberation. That in June 2024, when a move was made to give 30% of reservation for descendants of freedom fighters, that opened the floodgates of absolute chaos and anarchy. From August began, there are iconic scenes of Bangabandhu Mujibur Rahman's statue being, attempted to be destroyed, and then began the systematic targeting of Hindus, Buddhists, Christians, and which eventually turned in particular against Hindus, destruction of their properties, their businesses, and killings. The only consolation so far, very recently, which has come about, is that the Awami League has gone to the International Criminal Court, charging, the one who's heading Bangladesh with crimes, and Mr. Donald Trump too has spoken up is against it. Shruti, I think the first thing, if you will please elaborate on, is what is it that led to all this? Briefly.
I would say that, as you rightly said, the protest movement started in June. It was a protest against Supreme Court. It's actually, there was an amendment. There was a circular which was, in fact, brought in by Awami League government in 2018, where grade 9 to grade 13 jobs, government jobs, were supposed to be without quota. Now, Supreme Court in its June judgment said that this quota is being restored because it is ultra vires of the Constitution, because the constitutional provision is that they have to give quota to those people who fought in the liberation war. This is basically quota being given to the next generation, not next to next generation, including grandchildren of the freedom fighters. And since all of us, we know that in any kind of government jobs, when quota is introduced, and government jobs these days is very scarce, so most of the middle class educated people, they feel that their attempt to rise in the social ladder actually has been, is being taken by the government. Now, when the Supreme Court gave this particular judgment, given the fact that Awami League had a lot of control over the judiciary, the students thought that probably this is something that probably was premeditated, and it was Awami League probably it wanted to restore the reservation which it had done away with in 2018. That is number one. Number two is that after when this quota movement in fact garnered momentum in July, Sheikh Hasina's statement that if I don't give reservation to the freedom fighters, shall I give the reservation to the Rajakars? Rajakar in Bangladesh's political context is a very derogatory kind of terminology. So students, of course, this is something which made the students extremely angry, and they felt that, they're being labeled as anti-national. In the common parlance, it will be anti-national. It will be the collaborator with the Pakistani regime, which is worse than being anti-national. So that actually, in fact, fueled this particular movement. And of course, as it is known as Gana Abhyutan, which is People's Revolution, People's Revolt. So obviously, people from all walk of life, they joined with the youth when six people were killed, and the former prime minister addressed the nation. Actually, many people feel that she was not apologetic regarding the death of six students. And after that, order was given to clamp down on this movement, which actually resulted in much more killing, which actually brought the army saying that they will stand by the nation, which actually meant that they're not going to stand by the government. Obviously, there was no other option rather than providing safe passage to Sheikh Hasina. And we all know that she has taken asylum in India now.
Thank you. No, Muhammad Yunus, it's quite obvious that all this mayhem against Hindus doesn't seem to have moved him. And as far as governing of Bangladesh is concerned, also I don't think there is anything that he can be given credit to. Would you like to elaborate on what he has done or what he is supposed to be doing? Or
in fact, when he came in as the chief advisor of the interim regime, initially he was slightly reluctant, and later the students who had spearheaded this particular movement, in fact, asked for him to give, to lead the country at this particular critical movement of transition. Initially, when he joined the movement, there were attacks against the Hindus, including some of the supporters of Awami Leagues. There was attack also on the police, and many of the police left that post and went into hiding. So there was complete chaos in Dhaka and other areas. Police was not present, so the street was taken by criminal gangs belonging to all political affiliation. And also, the general people, who thought this is an opportunity to loot. Some people thought this is an opportunity to teach a lesson to the minorities, because minorities are seen, especially the Hindus, are seen as supporters of the Awami League. And in fact, in the last 10 years of Hasina's rule, I'm not including the 15 years, because the first 5 years he had got a thumping majority to rule the country. But then again, I would say that in the last 10 to 15 years, many believed, it's a perception. It's not that what is the reality. It's very difficult to know. There was a belief that Awami League has knowingly placed Hindus in more important positions at the cost of Muslims who are equally good. And like, for example, they are made DCs. One of them was, I think, the chairman of the textbook committee. Some were also vice chancellors, and some were also appointed as a police super, in a sense, police commissioner. So in a sense, so there was this anger because of the perception and because of the motivated campaign by vested interest to say that, Awami League is appeasing the Hindus, Awami League is appeasing the India. So there was this kind of perception which was created by the vested interest, whether it is true that the Hindus were in important position. So therefore, the thing is that, the attack was both Hindu as a minority community who had taken advantage of Awami League being in the rule. That is number one. Number two, Hindus as supporters of Awami League. Since the target was Awami League, so Hindu automatically became the target. Third is that in Bangladesh, we have seen, in fact, in the past, since Bangladesh's liberation, there is this Vested Property Act. So in a sense, you can claim a Hindu property saying that this is a vested property, and there is a coalition of a kind of interest. So a person who goes and says that this is vested property, the DC, which lists that particular property as vested property, and there is this bribe. Even to get your legitimate property out of the list of the vested property, sometimes people have to pay bribes. So there is Hindu are economically vulnerable because, as all of us we know, in East Pakistan, the landed aristocracy, majority of them were Hindus. So this, there is this economic aspect to attack on Hindus, to pressurize them, to force them to leave the country. But also at the same time, I would like to add that this is the first time the Hindus also came together, protested against the violence which was happening to them, and they actually quoted a famous song in Bangla which says that this country does not belong to anybody's father. In a sense, we will not leave the country. That was the spirit, number one. Number two, as you asked, about the approach of the interim regime. In fact, there was Prime Minister Modi also spoke to the caretaker chief, Muhammad Inus, Professor Muhammad Inus, and he visited the Dhakeswari temple. But also at the same time, I would not say that he's not committed to protect the Hindus. The fact is that, as I said, police have left their post. Who will give the protection at this moment of time when the law and order mechanism completely got paralyzed due to the manner in which the government fell?
But what is alarming is that we've had for the 15 years that the Awami League ruled from 2009 onwards. We had again had a renewal of friendship and all the every year we were celebrating the yodhas, that is war veterans of the Mukti Bahini and Indian Army would meet in Dhaka, Calcutta, Delhi, and pay tributes to all those whose lives were lost in this. And it had there was a good renewal, because during the Bangladesh Nationalist Party's regime, we had, I think, a very large presence of Pakistan's ISI there, who made an entry into our northeastern region. And they converted what were classically insurgents into insurgent come terrorists, like the Alpha, like the Matai undergrounds, the Naga underground. All of them were literally converted to with a very good stock of weaponry and all being made available to them, money. And it also, in Assam, it created a movement of easing, creating conditions for illegal settlers to come. And I wrote a book, Assam Terrorism and the Demographic Challenge. In 2008, there were 8 districts where the demography had changed, and now I think it's 14 districts or so, where the demography is, but still in this period of 2009 till the June this year, the relationship was very good. That is now, I think, in a bit of and there are reports that even the army has joined in targeting Hindus. Is that correct? And what else have you got to say on this?
I would say that, as you correctly mentioned, that during the BNP regime between 2001 to 2006 was the worst nightmare as far as India is concerned. We saw the rise of radicalism within Bangladesh, like, for example, the 2005 bomb blast in 63 districts, simultaneous bomb blast in 63 districts out of 64, where the JMB announced that they are present and they would like to have a government, Islamist government at that point of time. We also saw the suicide bombing in the judiciary. We also saw in 2004, 10 truckloads of arms and ammunition, which landed in a jetty in Chittagong. And many of the, as you rightly said, many of the Indian insurgent groups were provided shelter in Bangladesh, and they were handed over only after the Awami League came to power. But having said that, I would also like to say that, this entire thing of starting, to honoring those people who fought the liberation war, not just from India, across the world, was a tradition which was started in 2007 and 8 when military-backed caretaker regime was in power. So I would say that it is the Bangladesh Army which established this particular tradition and thought that, this needs to be emphasized and celebrated. And this was taken forward by, by the Awami League regime which was in power. And I completely agree with you. The relationship between India and Bangladesh were excellent. But also at the same time, I would like to say that we have, in fact, institutionalized this relationship to a very large extent. Unlike in the past, between 1999 to 2009, I would say 2008, when Moinuddin Ahmad visited India, General Moinuddin Ahmad, you really did not have any army chief visiting, Bangladesh army chief visiting India. But that situation has changed. You have now both the armies, India and Bangladesh, are training in each other's NDC. You also have various joint exercises that has been introduced in the past 10 years. So therefore, I'm speaking of institutionalization. So it is no more a relationship only with the Awami League, but India also has developed relationship with the Bangladesh army. And the particular incident you are speaking in Chittagong actually is, where as per the newspaper report, one of the leaders of Jamaat Islami, or the worker of Jamaat Islami, had put a social media post against ISKCON in Bangladesh, and there was demonstration against that particular post, in which, as I said, the police has left that post in spite of army asking them to come and take over the position. Many are still scared of reprisal attack on them, because the government's position is that anybody who has been involved in attack in the past, action will be taken against them. And all of us, we know in the past 15 years, Awami League used the police as a political instrument. So many of the police are also scared. So it was much more of a law and order kind of situation which army was trying to control, as per the media report. That is what I understand. But I don't think Bangladesh army was being an instrument to attack on the Hindus, is something which is a little difficult to believe. But then again, one is only relying on the newspaper report. One does not know the truth. But I don't think so at this moment. They can afford to antagonize.
I fully, that my reaction was also the same as that. It cannot be. But today it's a free media, and there are fake reports also that keep coming out in media. But well, now at this stage, while the Awami League has charged Muhammad Yunus and maybe I think 66 others of crimes, we don't know the exact details, but this is at least a beginning. What do you see the future as coming out as the near future?
I would say that, these charges and counter charges in Bangladesh politics, if you watch it, it's not something, which is new. One political party comes, then there are charges against the outgoing party. So it is a kind of Bangladesh political tradition. I just wish that Bangladesh need to come out of this particular tradition. Of course, the background in which this particular interim regime has come, obviously it is a student come people's movement. So therefore, there is this pressure to try those people who have been involved in crime. They're calling genocide, although I don't agree with that. Genocide is a very different kind of terminology. One should not use this particular word very, very loosely. So therefore, I would say the future of Bangladesh looks like, there has to be an election, because all of us, we know the interim regime, which is backed by the Bangladesh military, should be a transitional government. And the focus must be on, bringing electoral reforms which will facilitate kind of election. But this particular government has taken into its ambit, like, for example, reforming the constitution or rewriting a new constitution, and then, reforming the police, reforming the judiciary, reforming the political system. I think it's too much for any interim regime to take into its ambit. And if I can give an example, if you take the example of Nepal, exactly this constitution writing of 1990, which was done by the monarchy's appointed committee, we saw how it led to the underground movement of the Maoists, which insisted on an elected constituent assembly to write the constitution. And we also, coming back to Bangladesh's example, in 2007 and 8, there were many reforms which were brought in by the Bangladesh army back to interimism at that point of time. But once the election happened, Awami League came to power, many of them were not passed. You can't rule through ordinance. The ordinance has to be passed by the parliament to become a law. So I really do not know how far these reforms will be sustainable, but I can only say that perhaps these reforms are necessary to have at least a clean election, a clean and free and fair election. And of course, it will be up to the elected government to bring in the necessary reforms, whether they would like to have a new constitution. But also at the same time, I must say that the election needs to be inclusive. I'm saying that the moment you exclude a political party, like it happened in 2014, 18, and 24 election done by the Awami League, it will lead to this kind of movement. Because whether it is Awami League, in spite of what it did, it has a support base, like the BNP. These are two political parties. So I really think the election needs to be inclusive, because if you require a stable government, and any stable government, there is a geographical reality of India and Bangladesh. It is an interdependent relationship, and the geography will definitely dictate the bilateral relationship between the two countries. Of course, the political parties can give a kind of direction to it, but I'm sure this particular relationship will move forward irrespective of who is in power in Dhaka.
Very, very briefly, you think there was and there have been talk about the American connection. Do you have anything to say about that?
See, when the government fell, of course, the only thing one can make 2 plus 2 together in social science is this, that the government, in fact, the fall of Hasina and taking over by, briefly by the Bangladesh army, was welcomed by the US. It was the first country to welcome it. And the speculation is that because, this particular speculation of the Western involvement is because Muhammad Yunus, who have been seen as a person close to the Western countries, is in power. So, but also at the same time, having said that, I would say that there was genuine movement, there was genuine anger against the Awami League in power. There was, humongous corruption in this thing, and there was also, the Digital Security Act, where you really do not have the freedom of expression, where people are scared to speak in public. So therefore, in a sense, the governance was also not very great. The economy was started doing badly post-COVID. So therefore, there are many other factors which actually led, I think the major factor is that having flawed elections over and over again, and also at the same time being very, very dictatorial towards the opposition and towards the free expression by common people. If at least you should have that forum, that space where you can express your anger. If that is closed, obviously you will see this kind of movement in any country.
And you think that Mr. Trump's message will have any effect?
I would say that I really do not know whether Trump's message was for the domestic audience in the US.
He's not even taken over yet. But anyway, he's one leader who's made that.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pattanaik. It was you brought out some very pertinent and important points. Thank you. All the best.
Thank you, Col Anil Bhat, for having me in this program. Thank you so much.